welcome to the values module. I am so proud of this module and excited to share it with you. What I thought would take me a couple of days to create has actually taken several weeks and completely transformed my own personal understanding of what my values are, why it's important to use my values, and how to apply them in my life. And it's transformed the way I think, the way I coach, the way I'm dealing with my kids, the way I'm dealing with my business, all of it. And so I'm super excited to share what I've learned. Values are what give us meaning and what give us purpose. And when we identify what is important to us, we're actually able to live and step into our own power instead of being controlled by that laundry list of shoulds, what we should be doing, what we should be thinking, and seeking external rewards and validation and praise and checking all the boxes. When you understand your values, it allows you to really connect with the core of who you are. When we're drinking, we often feel very apathetic. We have values, but we don't feel connected to them. And part of it's because we've had to literally disconnect from them because when we're, pursuing and prioritizing an addiction, we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the ability to prioritize what's really important in our life. So addiction causes us to compromise who we are and what matters most to us, and then go a step further and justify that behavior. And we get all confused in our brain. And that confusion and that hollowness and that sense that we're not doing it right create a void in our life. We become devoid of meaning. We don't feel like what we're doing has a purpose because it doesn't. Drinking has no purpose. And so, if you want to reconnect with your life and with your sense of purpose and with your sense of self, you have to define your purpose. And that's the challenge because, especially in early sobriety, the big challenge is I'm just not going to drink. But what comes next? That's super hard. But starting with your values versus a set of external goals is super important. I mean, that would be like, starting on a trip and not having maps to know where you're going. Your values define what's really important to you and help you understand what will give you meaning, and how to pursue and move through your life. The questions that we have about why are we here? What's the point of all of this? What makes life worth living? What do I want to look back on and feel proud of? And deep down, deep in my core, what's really important to me? What gets me out of bed in the morning? What moves me to tears? What makes me laugh until my belly hurts? What fills me with compassion? What connects me with this thing called life? These are the questions that values help us to understand. Um, they help us to become aware of where we need to be channeling our time and our energy and our money and our focus, and what steps will actually help us create an authentic life that's not just a reflection of everything that we're told that we need to be doing. Even in recovery, it's so easy to get caught up in the everyday busyness and all the melodramas of the superficial circumstances in our life. But we know that ultimately that all stuff kind of distracts us. I mean, it is the point to have connections and relationships and complete this class called Earth School. But there is something more. And so moving out of those everyday details and looking deeper is what we're going to do in this module. Values are the principles that guide and motivate us. They make us unique. They give our lives meaning. They are our deepest desires, our causes. Values are also multidimensional. It's not just about what's important to us or what we want. They not only reflect our own priorities, but they also reflect how we are able to make an impact on the world. Because a self centered life lacks purpose. Our values are what and how we contribute. Therefore, they make us feel valuable. Our life matters when we exemplify what's possible for other people because we are living true to our sense of right and wrong. Our values breathe life into ideas, and they attract us to the people and the places and the events that resonate with us. When we fulfill our mission, we are inspiring others to carry on with theirs. And it just makes the world a better place. We become the best version of ourselves. For example, imagine that peace of mind is one of your core values. Imagine it's the top thing, just for a minute. Most of us don't have peace of mind as our top value, but what if it was? Peace is the principle that you engage in the world. It's the most important thing in any given moment. If that were true, how would that impact your actions? How would that affect others? You wouldn't allow yourself to get as stressed. You would go into any situation bringing peace and not looking for a fight, not looking for right and wrong. You would be focused on peace. And that would change so much. You wouldn't take on more than you can chew. You'd say yes and mean it. You'd say no and mean it. It's not that you would be avoiding conflict. You can't avoid conflict. It's that you're bringing peace into the conflict. You make peace with conflict. And the result would be that you would feel more peace, and those around you would feel more peace. Everybody would be more peaceful because when you value peace, you create peace. And that is an example of how powerful values are in our life. When we really understand what they are and we really aim to apply them, it just changes our perspective. It changes our filter. It changes our thoughts and our behaviors. It changes what we see and what we value. Another example of a core value would be power. And I'm going to pull that one out because, as women especially, we're culturally conditioned to think that anybody who speaks that they value power is somehow a tyrant. We view power as masculine, it's selfish, and it's also finite. It's like if you have power, that power requires somebody else to give up some of theirs. When in fact, if you value power, you'd behave as though you were powerful. You'd make decisions without fear, you'd follow your heart, and you'd live authentically without worrying about the outcome because you're a powerful person. You'd take responsibilities for your actions and not blame your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your consequences on other people. And the result of believing that power is your value and behaving as it is that you would never be a victim of circumstance because you would always have your power. You'd be a badass boss and you'd move through the world powerful. And in doing so, you would inspire others to own their own power. So, values are something we not only possess and embody, but it's something we share and something we give. And that's the difference between a lot of the value work that you see out there. You kind of just pick the words that you're attracted to and resonate with and that you wish were important, but it doesn't necessarily reflect how you actually move and interact with the world. Values also give us an opportunity to reframe disappointments and difficulties into those positive experiences. I do talk a lot about toxic positivity, and it's very important not to immediately insist that every bad situation has a silver lining. It does, but it's very important to honor grief and anger and frustration and work through those emotions before you move into the learning opportunity. But that when we understand our values, they actually become our learning opportunity. They give us resilience and they give us a sense that whatever we're struggling with has meaning. They are the means that get us to the end. Whatever's important to us, if we're honoring that, then it's worth the struggle that we're going through to, continue to push that value, continue to honor that value. The famous philosopher Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." And we do that very early in sobriety. One of the first things I have you do is find your why. Because if you can understand why you want to be sober, why you want to quit drinking, why you not only want to quit drinking, but also love not drinking and create that as a value in your life, then you have to understand why you're doing it. So that on those dark days, those awkward moments, those cravings, you have a reason to get through that. Defining our values allows us to understand when and how and why sacrifice is meaningful. And it allows us to experience joy and vitality even when bad things happen, even when times are hard. The more important a value is to us, the more disciplined and energized we feel. And that's super, super important because values elicit natural motivation. And we're willing to do stuff even though there's sacrifices involved. For example, as women, I know I struggle with vanity. I think it's pretty common. It's hard to watch our youth fade. But our values can actually help us navigate this aging process. For example, if we value humor, like I do, then we learn to laugh at our wrinkles. And if we value wisdom, then we learn to recognize that we can only get wisdom through experience and time. And I guess that comes with wrinkles, you know. Experience and time is our greatest teacher, and we value that wisdom. So it allows us to handle the, slowing down and the fading of our hair and our face and, all of the things that come with aging. And if we value strength, then we're going to continue to work hard to maintain our agility and our endurance. So we're going to have meaning in our age in that it's kind of an obstacle or a challenge that we're ready to accept because we want to be as strong as we can be at whatever age we are. And if we value spirituality, then we may direct our focus from outward aesthetics of being beautiful and being strong to that more of an inward connection. So those values just show us there are a lot of different ways to handle the vanity and the aging process. And whatever value you have will give you meaning as you're growing older. And it'll give you a sense of purpose in whatever you're focusing on. Values are not the same as goals. So, for example, with the power situation, power is not something we want to get, it's something we exude. A goal is the outcome. A goal is something we want to achieve. It's something we can cross off a to-do list. It's an objective, yes or no, we have it. But values themselves are not actually emotional. They reflect how we behave regardless of how we feel. Let me say that again. A value is something that we possess and embody regardless of how we feel about it. So again, circle back to the peace and power as an example. If we value peace, it doesn't mean we avoid conflict. It doesn't mean we're never involved in conflict. It means that we're bringing peace to the conflict, to every conflict. Same thing with power. It doesn't mean we acquire power. We embody power. And that being said, it means we're powerful. It means that even when shit happens, we're not a victim. We're a survivor. Emotions help us identify our values. So, whatever we feel inspired to be disciplined and reliable and bring focused, that's a value. Values move us into action and make us feel strong emotion like empathy, tears, laughter, rage, even. But those emotions are pointing to the underlying value. Those emotions are not actually our value. So, if you're not living in accordance to your true values, your priority system remains stuck, or it even can regress. So when we have lower values or we're trying to embody or achieve things that aren't truly important to us, we revert to basic survival strategies, which include avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure, like we did in addiction. Or we are pleasing our parents and pleasing authority and adults and subjective cultural norms. And those mechanisms kept us safe as babies and children. We had to avoid pain and pursue pleasure and do what we were told. But as adults, those mechanisms lead to fear and judgment and resentment. The fear that we will live up to an the fear, excuse me, that we will fail to live up to an external standard, because if somebody else is setting the goal, we're always going to fall short of it. And we're going to feel resentment that we feel obliged to pursue somebody else's what's important to them and ignore what's important to us. Most of us, myself included, believe that our core values are actually um, what they're supposed to be. And in reality, they're injected with cultural assumptions and social idealism, and even moral hypocrisy if you really analyze the situation, especially in politics and some religious situations. I mean, there's just a lot of hypocrisy that doesn't resonate. Okay, this is okay, but that same principle isn't okay over here. We know that things don't make sense, and that grates on us, and that demoralizes and devalues what we really believe. And so, if we're not conscious of our values, we end up spending our life in mediocrity. We're trying to fit in. We're waiting to be told how we should live and what we should do next. And then also, we're accepting punishments or rewards for our best efforts to live by groupthink. And it's just not authentic. And that's why we don't feel like we're living our best life, because we're not. When we're living by those lower values or somebody else's values entirely, and they don't resonate with us, and furthermore, they conflict with our true core values, we require external motivation. So anytime you feel like, the motivation, the drive isn't there, but you're chasing a reward or avoiding a punishment, that's a lower value. We're seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and we end up just chasing a bunch of compulsions for immediate gratification. We find ourselves engaging in addictive behaviors, over consuming. We're eating too much, we're buying too much, we're doing too much, and we stop making decisions based on um, what we think, and we're just doing what we should do instead of following our authentic purpose. We move from duty into design when we instead stop and tune into what really is important and begin to follow our own moral compass. Again, we move from duty into design, our own creative, higher design. When you notice that you're operating on a should, what we'll do in this exercise is we'll trace the should back to the origin. Why should you? Who told you that? According to who should you do and be that? And that is such a powerful question to ask yourself. I should, according to who? Anything that you think you should do is definitely not one of your core values. Shoulds are lower values that are passed on to us by people parroting the tenets of subjective authority. They're not our true core values. And when we leave those shoulds and lower values unconscious and unexamined, our priorities become a culmination of all the judgments and hypocrisy and rejection that we've ever experienced in our life that have left us empty and unfulfilled. Feeling empty and unfulfilled leaves big voids inside of us. And these voids are what are driving the impulses and the instincts and the epigenetic effects and the habits and the behavior and the compulsions and the character traits that determine where we're going and what we're doing and how these voids need to be filled. We long to fill our voids. And a good way to understand the power of a void and how it influences us is, when you look down on somebody in judgment and you're too proud to admit that whatever's inside of them that you see as negative is also inside of you, or vice conversely, whenever you look up to somebody and idealize them and you're, either self-deprecating or humble, to admit that whatever is allowing them to be great is also inside of you, then that is reflecting a void. It's reflecting a part of yourself that you're disowning. And it's often referred to as our shadow. If you've ever read about the shadow or done any shadow work, this will be familiar. But if not, it's just that we're disconnecting from all the parts of ourselves, and there's a void there. Core values leave no shadow. When you're living your authentic truth, you're not casting any shadows. You are just real. And whenever you're feeling like you're better or worse than someone else in a given situation, that's an invitation to figure out what value you're disconnecting from and apply the value to, kind of step into your own truth. For example, um, a lot of the online value work that I found and completed through training programs with coaching and my master's degree and other things, I've taken a lot of value evaluation. So, what are your values? Take this test and we'll tell you what your values. And one that comes up for me a lot is intelligence. And my first response is to for sure agree. I have a hard time tolerating uninformed opinions, myopic perspectives, political and social and religious constructs that leave some people privileged and some people in poverty. And that kind of shit just drives me insane. And I find it very unintelligent. I have zero tolerance for zero tolerance policies. I've had 7 kids going through high school, and we've come up a lot against the zero tolerance policies that just seem ridiculous. And, we have a human being who's saying, I can't make a real decision because I've got this thing written on a piece of paper, this rule. And it just doesn't make any sense. I don't have a lot of support for 3-strike rules. I don't want to get into the justice system, but, whenever we take the decision out of, allow a human being to apply judgment, to me, that's just showing a lack of intelligence. Any system that puts principles over people, it triggers me. And I get very upset in situations where my brand of intelligence is not being applied. But that's exactly why I have come to realize that intelligence is not my core value. Because for me, intelligence triggers a bunch of shoulds, and that's a red flag. It's important to understand the distinction between our values and our emotions, and not just emotions, our goals. Value would be a goal for me, a strength. Value might be a strength for me. Um, it's also a bias, though. I tend to get very binary and judgy when intelligence comes into a situation and I determine that you don't have enough. Um, our values should speak to who we are when we're at our best. And so the truth that lies beneath the shoulds reveals why I actually think that instead of intelligence, I need to acknowledge that I value integrity. If intelligence were my core value, it wouldn't trigger so much negative emotion. Values aren't what we demand or expect, they are what we exude. They are what we offer to the world. It's who we are when no one is looking. And for me, intelligence is a goal, maybe even a strength, but it's not something um, that I am always positive about. And when I see a lack of intelligence, to be honest, I lose my shit. I lose my own intelligence. I react, I judge, I blame, I even hate. But integrity is something that I can do and be regardless of the situation. It feels much more authentic to who I really am and what I truly value. So integrity is something I hold sacred. Intelligence is just something I prefer. And so, what's the point of this linguistic exercise? Because as you go through trying to determine your values, you're going to look at a lot of words and you're just going to be like, blah, 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 I don't even know. So, what's the point of looking at words and trying to figure out what resonates? Well, in my example, it's not to devalue my affinity for intelligence, but it's to admit that my pursuit of intelligence does not always lead to intelligence results. My intelligence may or may not inspire me to be the best version of myself. And honestly, my intelligence often, takes me down a level because I want to duke it out over your lack of intelligence. My brand of intelligence is just a bit inconsistent. I don't even always know what intelligence looks like. And my faulty application does not always lead to good results. So, in some situations, I recognize that intelligence shouldn't be my main focus. What I want to bring to a situation, what I do bring actually, is that's much more valuable is my integrity. I know what integrity feels like at all times. There's no confusion for me. It doesn't incite my emotions. And knowing that I value integrity and having taken the time to do these thought exercises and make an informed conclusion as I compare integrity to intelligence, it helps me make decisions. That's the point of this exercise, is to help you make decisions. When I'm aligned with my core value, I am able to align with my true purpose in life. That's the point. It would be very easy for me, and it is, to get sidetracked and hijacked if I were to believe that intelligence is my core value. I'd spend a lot of time, trying to make the world a smarter place. But after a deep dive, I can see that I need to keep my intelligence in check and that it's actually something that I value lower than, let's say, my integrity. Lower values, and they're still values, but they're just lower on our rating scale. In these exercises, we're going for the top 5, maybe 10 true, authentic core values. But our lower values tend to be emotion based, and that's how you can determine which ones those are. Lower values are associated with the amygdala, which is the desire center of the brain. Core values, on the other hand, are associated with the forebrain, which is our executive function. It's where we get our objectivity. Lower values lead us to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and core values allow us to embrace both pain and pleasure as essential in the pursuit of our inspired mission. Running towards or away from the external stimuli keeps us in reaction mode and also resistant to the challenges that we face when we're pursuing a mission. So let's talk a little bit about what a mission is and why I'm using that word. We're going to compare and contrast passion to mission. Intelligence for me is a passion. Integrity is a mission. Keep in mind this is wordplay, and words are just containers of meaning that we assign the meaning. So what the words mean to me may not mean that to you, and that's okay. So we're using wordplay to kind of dig into what's really resonating with us. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to have a passion for intelligence. I'm not saying that at all. It's a worthwhile value. But I'm just using the word passion versus mission to compare and contrast my own experiences as I look back and look at how I'm applying integrity and intelligence in my life, so that I'm modeling it so that you can do the same for yours. So in this exercise, let's say that passion is an emotional reaction to something external. So I react when I see something that's not intelligent, or I get super excited when I love a good argument or a good, justification for something. I find it intelligent. But a mission is a moral-based action that comes from an intrinsic calling. A mission inspires us to spontaneously act regardless of the external rewards or the punishment. It's just something that we do. And I feel very aligned with the word integrity. I have integrity when no one's talking or when no one's looking. I have integrity when no one's looking. I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to explain it. I don't need to argue for it. I just do that. And I kind of always have. It's very important to me to let my words match my actions. The Latin root for passion is suffering. And again, this is all wordplay, but stick with me. Buddha teaches that the desire for that which is unattainable, which means pleasure without the pain, you cannot attain pleasure without pain, and the desire for that which is unavoidable, which is pain without pleasure, is the source of human suffering. When we are functioning with the lower values, using the survival based amygdala in our brain, we are vulnerable to passions, and passions lead to infatuation and craving and uncontrollable emotions. Passions flare in an imbalanced mind because we're either conscious of the upside, pleasure, or we're conscious of the downside, but we're not conscious of both. And you think about that, in a passionate new relationship, all you're seeing is the great sex and the cute little, silly habits that they have that later are going to annoy the shit out of you. But we're not conscious of the downsides. We're just passionate for the situation. And in that moment, in those times, our awareness is incomplete. We're not fully conscious. But when we live congruently with our highest values, and that's the point of all this, our inspired mission activates our forebrain. It activates our executive center. It activates our objectivity. We are fully aware of the pros and cons. We're able to embrace the positives, and we're also able to apply resilience to the negatives. We have cliches that speak to this. Passion makes idiots of the cleverest men. And if passion drives you, let reason hold the reins, because we know passion can be problematic. A passionate man may be sexy, but a man with a mission gets shit done. Again, these are just words, but you get my point. So let's talk for a minute about why our inspired mission versus a passion invigorates us energetically, and why passion tends to burn itself out. We end up feeling drained and depleted pursuing our passions because they're rooted in our lower values. We're attached to the results instead of the process, and think that the ends justifies the means. And we end up burning out. And that has a biological consequence, a biological connection. Energy is created in the mitochondria of all of our cells. These are the powerhouses that convert oxygen and nutrients into ATP. If you've ever taken a freshman biology class, that'll sound familiar. We get our chemical energy is ATP, and it's produced in the mitochondria. Okay. So the brain uses homeostatic feedback to gauge our energy needs and regulate the production of our mitochondria. When we are living out of alignment with our true values, aka pursuing passions instead of our mission, we end up having a lot of wasted energy. We've got subjective bias, we misinterpret events, and we distort our reality. And all of that extra energy throws off our equilibrium. A distorted reality distorts our energy production in our body. And our body either ends up overproducing or underproducing the number of mitochondria we need to thrive. And then our energy levels either spike or they plummet. And we experience either manic, nervous, and high energy states, or we experience depression, we feel subdued, and we kind of exist in a lower energy state. Our ability to stay centered and to be resilient is compromised. But when we are in alignment, we have the least amount of disturbance and disorientations and misinterpretations and bias. So we're not wasting our energy. Our energy production is efficient. We have exactly the right amount of energy that we need in the present moment, and we feel, because we are, in balance. Feeling like we are balanced, that we are where we're supposed to be, we're doing what we're supposed to do, that has tremendous consequence on our sense of purpose, and by extension our sense of value, which is our self-worth. The perception that you are lacking self-worth, or that when you feel like you're just not good enough or you're not doing it right, that is disheartening and debilitating. Self-worth is a calm state of certainty. and it spontaneously emerges the moment our goals, our intentions, and our actions are congruent with our highest priorities and values. Any degree of incongruence is a major downfall in maintaining that empowered, confident, calm state. When we are congruent, we are confident. And that confidence is power. It's what fuels us in the world. Self worth arises naturally when we have an accurate perception of ourself, our abilities, our situations, other people, our environment. The more accurate we are, the more our actions, the results reflect the intentions of our actions. And we're able to walk our talk, and we're not wasting time and energy, you know, trying to figure out problems or seeking validation and approval from others that we're doing the right thing. When we have self worth, we don't need validation and approval because the call's coming from inside the house. It's just naturally arising. Self worth looks like poise, and it feels like an ordered mind. It's power, it's presence, it's certainty of vision, it's feeling purposeful, it's feeling meaningful, and it's having patience for whatever moment you're in, that you're doing the right thing and it's all going to work out. And that is just an amazing way to live. But, as we've all experienced firsthand, not everybody who acts confident actually feels that way. And that outward display of an exaggerated assertiveness is a blow to our self esteem, to our sense of self worth, because we're not being honest. And that incongruence creates dysregulation in our body and in our brains and in our emotional health. And that facade that brings us external validation, the rewards of people's approval, causes internal disintegration. And we end up kind of dissolving into the illusion that we create. And that's exhausting and demeaning and demoralizing to have people think that we're something that we're not. When our lives are in conflict with our core values, our emotions like pain, suffering, overwhelm, anxiety, anger, resentment, frustration, those things surface as warning signs. They are an invitation, if you will, to make a correction. And when we notice warning signs, the negative emotions, looking at our values can show us where we're going wrong. And that's the whole point of doing this, because especially in early recovery, there's a lot of stuff you're trying to figure out. And where should you apply your intention? It's wherever you're feeling pain, resistance, anger, frustration, all of it. That is where somehow you're not aligned with your values. So if you want to feel connected to yourself, you have to slow down and make that connection. And that's what we're doing here. That's why we're spending time looking at our values. We have to take the time to appreciate and understand ourselves first before we can ever expect other people to appreciate and understand who we are. If we don't understand and appreciate who we are, how can we connect in an authentic way? We can't. But understanding our values grounds us. Um, it explains who we are when no one's looking, and who we are beyond the expectations of all the roles that we have and all the group think that we're a part of. It's what makes us unique. If you set goals and priorities and objectives and intentions in the direction of what you truly value, your life will take on a whole new level of meaning. You will excel. You will awaken your inner goddess. You will wake up the executive center in your brain, and you'll be objective. You'll step into your own leadership, and you'll recognize and use your own genius. You'll have certainty and belief in yourself. You'll have confidence and self-confidence, self-awareness. You'll expand your space and time horizons and give yourself permission to do more. You won't feel limited. You'll respond to stress, and you'll adapt, and you'll have resilience instead of feeling distressed and fearful and stagnant. So, in this exercise, there are 3 parts, and I encourage you to break them up. So, this video might be step 1, which would make 4 parts. And then there's 3 steps, 3 different exercises that we're going to dig into. In step 1, you're going to review your life experiences, and look at where you've internalized values due to pain and trauma, religion, authority figures. You'll take a look at your childhood and the events that have taught you in adulthood, major life lessons. Now, this isn't a deep dive, it's just kind of a quick review to get the major takeaways. But that's what you're going to do in step 1 is you'll start looking at the values that you've incorporated and that you've been trying to live up to, and you'll look at where those are coming from so you can decide if you want to keep them. And then in step 2, you're going to identify the values that you think are guiding various areas of your life. And again, this is where I was like, yeah, intelligence is my top value, when in reality, when I really looked at it, it wasn't. And in order to look at or try to tease out your values, you're going to look at 12 domains of your life: family, partner, parenting, friendships, career, finances, personal growth, leisure, spirituality, community, physical health, and mental well being. And again, this doesn't have to be an intense psychiatric review. You're just looking for the ideals that attract you the most. And then at the end of step 2, you'll rate how well you think you're living up to those ideals and what values you want to nurture moving forward. Now, in order to do this exercise, I give you a list of core values that I have collected from multiple sources. There's at least 100 on there, and it might be overkill for some of you, and I'll give you another option. But um, it might be overkill, but it also might be incomplete. So if there's a word coming to mind, go ahead and use that. Just add it. My list is kind of a wall of words, and it'll appeal to you if you value words like I do. But what I've done is I've grouped similar values kind of into word groups to kind of try to make it easier. So, it's an overarching ideal, and then, you might find something that's a little more specific that resonates more. But just remember that words are only containers of meanings. What a word means to me might not mean that to you. And that's absolutely okay, because you know what a word represents to you. So don't overthink your choices, because I'm telling you, if you do that, you're going to blow your circuits. That's why one of the reasons why this module took weeks for me to identify, because I was taking all these tests online. Do you value culture more than tradition? Like, I don't know, it just blows my circuits. So if you start to feel overwhelmed, I do have an option. There is a website, and I'll put the link right below this video, called Personal Values. And of all the online, quickie tests that I've taken, this one's actually quick, and it's pretty simple. And at the end, it'll generate your top 5 values. So if you look at that wall of words and you're like, I have no idea, then just go to that website, and in 5 minutes, you'll have a list that allows you to kind of move forward. So again, the link's below the video. So once you have your list of core values, and you've, looked at your life of all the shoulds and the ideals, and then you've looked at what really resonates to you, then you're going to take those values and you're going to analyze the evidence of what's going on for real in your life. You're going to look at where you're spending your money, where you're spending your time, where you're applying your focus, and compare and contrast what you believe you're holding as truly valuable with what values you're actually pursuing. Um, because regardless of what we think we're doing, the truth is in reality. Some of our values are simply imposters. They are influenced by cultural norms or subjective authorities, and they're informing all of the shoulds that we have. So the less, and here's why it's important to figure that out, because the less something is really valuable to us, the more external motivation we require to engage with that. So that's where we're procrastinating, that's where we're feeling resentment, and it's just really important to identify those imposter values. So in this step, we're going to identify the imposter values that are inherently creating conflict, and then we're going to look at where we are and where we want to go. Standard kind of coaching exercise. So you'll get some quick, then you'll set some goals. So you'll look at where you're at, where you want to go, and then we'll do some SMART goals. And I explain what SMART is. You know, it's one thing to say, I want to lose weight. And it's another thing to say, I have an appointment at the gym at 2 o'clock tomorrow with my friend Elizabeth. That's a SMART goal. It's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. It's not some pie in the sky ideal, you know, losing weight. That's not a goal. That's a side effect of real goals. And so before you get started, I do want to give you an example, kind of a parting takeaway of how knowing your core values can resolve issues in ways that serve your. I had a client last week who came into our session wanting to work on resentment that she was feeling towards her mother. She had agreed to a long distance Thanksgiving, so traveling for Thanksgiving with her elderly parents. Now, she's just finalized her divorce and she's back in school and she has no income and she's 60 and she can't afford to buy the plane ticket. She can't afford to rent the car. She can't afford to pay for a hotel. But she feels like she has to go on this trip because her parents are old. It might be dad's last Thanksgiving. And it's very important to her mom for all of the siblings to be in one place, you know, for the 2 seconds it takes to get everybody in the same picture. And so she had planned to go because she values family. And she planned to pay with a credit card to fund the entire trip. But in reality, this will put her back seriously financially. It'll be several $1,000s. And she's got a small little nest egg that she's hoping to soon be able to buy a home. And she doesn't want thousands of dollars on her credit card or to take out of her savings. And she's also at 60, she's worried about COVID. She doesn't want to go through the airports and the travel and be around large groups of people. And she also knows how this trip is going to be very stressful because her parents kind of stress her out. You know, she's been in recovery for 2 years, but she's still struggling with healthy boundaries and some codependent thoughts and behaviors. And the trip will be emotionally exhausting. So she's not looking forward to it. She doesn't want to go, and she feels like she has to go. And therefore, she's resentful of her bossy mom. But once she listed the reasons that she didn't want to go, she was able to shift her perspective because it's not her mom she resents, it's herself. Because she's not honoring her values of financial security, emotional well being, fairness, because her siblings can afford this trip. Her parents can afford this trip. But at 60, nobody's volunteering to pay her way. And so she's resentful. And it's not fair to her to be asked to make such a huge sacrifice in her life when everybody else, it's just not really that big of a deal. And she thought she was obligated to go. But in this circumstance, her value of being true to her family and honoring her family is in conflict with her values that ultimately honor herself. And in the end, the cool thing is it took her about 20 minutes of us bouncing this ball back and forth. She decided that it would actually be easier for her to act in her own best interest and deal with the discomfort of telling her mom no and dealing with that disappointment. And it's just much better for her to honor her own life and her own values. And her mom's an adult. Her mom can deal with her own disappointment or hire her own coach. So this video will be, you know, your the first chunk of time that you're taking in this module, and then you've got 3 steps. Step 1 is to go back through your childhood And major life events, step 2 is to determine what your values actually are. And then step 3 is to figure out if you're actually applying those values and to set goals for moving forward. And I just want to leave you with one parting piece of information. As I said, I looked at a lot of different value approaches and found a lot of them to be shallow and also inaccurate. You know, if I was walking around thinking intelligence was a core value, it would lead me to into a lot of conflicts. And where I got the biggest helpful infusion into my awareness of my own values was a website where, again, I put that link below as well. And it's Dr. Dementini. And he has developed an approach to values like I've never seen. It's not a wall of words and, you know, what ideals you think should be most important. He asks 13 questions. And so I'm encouraging you, if you want to dig deeper into what your values really are and how you're really applying them in your life and get some powerful transformative takeaways. He asks 13 questions that are designed to look at the bulk of your time, energy, and focus and pull out themes. So you're not being given a bunch of words and, you know, rate this one over the other one. You're actually identifying the themes and looking at all of your priorities and making connections that honestly nobody can make for you. There's no quiz on the internet that's going to help you figure all this out. It might give you a good starting point, but this one, it's all you handwrite in your answers and then you evaluate. So it does take some time, but I found it extremely helpful. So once you work through steps 1, 2, and 3 of my my assignment, which is highly informed by that website. And if you feel complete after you're done, then you're good. If you're interested or you just feel like you want to dig a little more, check out Dr. Dementini's website and see what you come up with. And then if you want to talk more about any of this or you need help figuring out, discerning what your true values are and what truly gives you meaning and purpose, just make an appointment with me, shoot me an email, and we'll talk about it. And then after this is kind of part 1. It's the big whammy, the big whale. And then there's one more module in the value section that I'm super excited about that's all about our shoulds, you know, and I call it Should You? Maybe. And so that'll be next. Take care.